The Infernal Hulk is pure nightmare fuel because this guy has enough power to rival the one above all, and I'll talk about what that means here in a second. But what this does is this initially opens up in Red Creek, Kentucky, with a couple of guys, right, who are basically construction workers. Now, one of these guys is important, and I'll talk about who that guy is here in a second, but in the midst of this whole thing, there's an alarm that goes off. And so this dude ends up bailing out, right? He takes off as fast as humanly possible because the whole thing is an old evacuation siren. And this other guy is just kind of like, I've never heard that siren before. And the first guy says, that's because they've never used it before. Now, that whole thing was 3 hours ago. In the here and now, we just have like a handful of soldiers who are preparing battle formations, right? They're quite literally prepared to go to war. Now, this guy who had jumped in his truck and taken off, the guy that I said was important, that is a guy by the name of David Bridger. Now, David Bridger is a name that a lot of you guys may not know of. He debuted in a 2019 one-shot comic called War is Hell. It had 2 stories. The second one was written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, the guy who's writing the story, and it focused on the idea of David Bridger in Afghanistan basically being a war hero. And that's why in this comic, he's referred to that way, right? One of the soldiers says, "Holy crap, you're David Bridger. Captain Davis said you were a legit war hero in your day." And Bridger just says, "Right, that's not how I remember it." And the other guy's just kind of like, "Well, he said you were a crazy good shot at least, and that you killed a whole ton of people." And Bridger's just like, that's the opposite of a hero kid, right? Because as it stands right now, whatever force this is that's moving towards them is 1,000 meters out. It's getting closer and all these guys are afraid to die. And that's why Bridger just tells this other dude, he says, "I can see your name tape. What's your name?" And the guy just says, "It's Travis." And so Bridger just says, "Travis, nobody in combat's a hero. Everyone's just trying not to get killed. The good ones help their buddies not get killed. And I know it's scary as hell, Travis, but I'm going to try to look out for you." Cool. And Travis is like, awesome, right? Because Bridger can tell right off the bat, Travis is terrified, and he should. Because almost immediately there is this massive explosion when the Hulk arrives on the scene, and initially it's a crater, right? So you have like all these guys, right, who just kind of look into this gigantic hole. You got all these helicopters that are hovering around the area, and Banner's hand just comes out of the ground. And at that point, one of these guys is like, "Dr. Bruce Banner, by the authority of the Department of Defense, we are authorized, presumably, arrest you." And the Infernal Hulk shows up and just says, "There is no Banner here," and immediately starts getting to work. And when I say getting to work, I mean, one of these guys is like, "What do you want?" And the Hulk just looks at him and is like, "From you? Nothing," and just like claps his hands and blows this dude's head apart. At that point, Bridger's just like, "Light him up," right? And they all start firing every shot they have. Helicopters, bullets, the whole 9 yards. What does Hulk do? "Man, son, you better come strong." Bro, this guy leaps at one of the helicopters, tears the thing down from the skies, crashes it into the ground below, and on top of so many of these soldiers. The ones left keep firing. Infernal Hulk grabs that guy and crushes him with his bare hands. And then it comes to Bridger. And Bridger at that point is like, "Travis, run. Get out of here as fast as you can." And Hulk just says, "I know you, right? I see Jenny DeGaulle, the war devil, behind your eyes. You little mortal belong with us." And seizes Bridger. And then at that point, he looks at Travis, and he's just like, "In this one as well." And then he literally grabs Travis, starts crushing him, and then rematerializes him. And he just says, "Yes, change now, my darling," and just converts this guy into what's basically like a demonic being. Not that dissimilar from a zombie, right? Just absorbs this dude. And so at that point, the Hulk just laughs and is like, "Very well, just you then," right? Because Travis clearly didn't survive the experience. And so at that point, Hulk just reaches down into the ground and says, "I summon the living city of Galagathia. Like once I summoned you to the bright towers of Nanif, I now raise you from the mountain tomb of Udru. The mother of horrors is dead. Her eldest lives. Obey me. Rise." And like summons this dead city from the ground. So here's the question, man. What in the hell is going on? Okay, let's wind the clock back to the Incredible Hulk issue number 29 going into issue number 30. So one of the things to know is that over the course of Philip Kennedy Johnson's run, the Incredible Hulk comic was more of a horror comic than a traditional. The Incredible Hulk just smashes things. And where there were things like the War Devils and so on and so forth, we didn't really know what it all meant until we started getting information about the eldest, Udru, and the mother of horrors. And that's where issue number 29 comes into play, and why it is that I say the Infernal Hulk seemingly has enough power to rival the one above all. Now technically, this is the second part of the Requiem plane. So if you guys are digging what you see here, let me know. We can go back and start covering Philip Kennedy Johnson's run. We covered one of the stories, but not all of it. And so what happens in 29 while the Incredible Hulk and Betty Ross are traveling the Requiem plane, where the mother of horrors is confined, is that they attain information from Philaxel, basically this long-dead being who is the keeper of lost knowledge. And so what they learn is this tale they weren't aware of before, where it says, "I see Earth when it was new, quiet, gods, nothing else, oceans deep, peaceful, except there's something down there. right? It's changing things, everything. Pretty things went dark, quiet things got hungry. And so Betty asks, what else do you see? And the Hulk says, another god, the one who made everything. He didn't care about Earth until the monsters came. He made a monster to kill all the monsters. It was over. But the thing in the dark was still there. God opened the ground and found her. And she put the dark in him too. The mother of horrors created the one below all. Now here's how this all kind of fits together. Because what Philip Kennedy Johnson did was effectively retcon the origin of evil on Earth. So one of the things that have been established up to this point is that with a one above all had been responsible for the creation of all things in existence, including the multiverse Earth, as you can imagine is a single world in a single solar system, in a galaxy, within an infinitely expanding universe. And that is part of an infinite number of universes. It's hardly worth the notice of the one above all. And so for quite some time, the one above all didn't care. Hence the statement that it didn't care until the monsters came. Now, a lot of you guys probably know about the Elder Gods within Marvel. And in case you don't, these are beings like Chthon and Sidorak and Set, the Serpent King, and all that kind of stuff. Chthon, you guys probably know because of your travelings about the Scarlet Witch and so on and so forth. What Philip Kennedy Johnson had done is he had introduced this notion that at one point, the Elder Gods were benevolent beings. There were these kind individuals that existed on Earth. They didn't really care about sentient life because it was below them, but they were by no standards of measurement evil. That the mother of horrors, also known as Vinruvio, had actually been born outside the influence of the one above all. So she just kind of came into existence all of a sudden. And what ended up happening is that she quite literally took Earth for her own. And in infecting it, she also infected the Elder Gods. And that's what led to the corruption of the Elder Gods in the first place. So that's a massive retcon in the story. More so than that, when the one above all had basically discovered this and had investigated Earth to find out what was going on, that's when she corrupted the one above all. But by this point in time, she already had the eldest, and she already had her other child, Udru. Udru was created for the purpose of rivaling the one above all. What ended up happening is that when the one above all was infected and basically developed split personas, there was the one above all, and now there was the one below all, its dark, corrupted persona. The one above all destroyed Udru and then confined the mother of creation in chains. And so throughout the entirety of Philip Kennedy Johnson's run, it was basically the eldest trying to free the mother of horrors, trying to free its own mother. When that time finally came, which took place in issue number 30, the eldest had taken on the form of Abomination and then attacked the Hulk. During that process, the eldest had torn Bruce Banner out of the body of the Incredible Hulk, and then in doing that, attacked the Incredible Hulk directly, and then took over the form of the Incredible Hulk. After that, the eldest in the body of the Hulk went directly into where the mother of horrors was chained. Why? Because the Incredible Hulk was the only one who could free her. And so in encountering the Mother of Horrors, discovered that Mother of Horrors was so disheartened by the destruction of Udru and everything that she had lost. She didn't have the will to fight so much, so that she didn't even speak to the eldest. So the eldest in turn attacked the Mother of Horse, stole her power, and became the Infernal Hulk. That's how we get here. So the very fact that Infernal Hulk contains the power of a being who is able to corrupt the one above all is no small thing. Now, it is important to know that there is some context that we're kind of leaving out here. Hence the reason why I say, if you want me to cover the full totality of Philip Kennedy Johnson's run, let me know, right? It's a phenomenal run. It's one of the greatest Incredible Hulk runs of all time, and it feels a lot like Bill Mantlow's old school run, right? But kind of jumping back into Infernal Hulk, once this essentially City of the Dead is resurrected out in Red Creek, Kentucky, that Bridger, seeing all of this, is now infected with seemingly some variation of the Hulk's powers. This is kind of a brand new thing. We don't know how far-reaching it's going to be, and we don't even know what it looks like. But what we do know is that all these individuals start addressing Bridger directly, right? Come down. You said you would look out for us, Bridger, remember? You promised, right? And so, of course, he ends up descending down with all these guys. The indication here, though, is that Bridger is still on some level himself, not completely corrupted by the eldest. And so at that point, Infernal Hulk sits on a throne of bones and just says, your kingdom has its capital children, and your king summons you. Rise. And at that point, initiates the Age of Monsters, which is basically where Philip Kennedy Johnson's run has been going this entire time, right? This era where Infernal Hulk, who is now kind of bridging of dark magic and just incredible cosmic power, is going to usher in this age of hell on Earth. And so at that that point, you jump to the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, and they're watching this news report where this reporter says, conflicting reports out of Kentucky this morning as an entire mountain collapses blanketing the region in smoke. Local groups first blamed a coal mine fire that has been burning for decades, which actually kind of harkens back to Philip Kennedy Johnson's run, and this idea of where the body of Udru was buried. But the reporter continues on. But we are now hearing reports of a superhuman resembling a former Avenger, the Hulk. The Avengers have not yet confirmed Hulk's involvement, or if it is in fact Dr. Bruce Banner. Immediately following the catastrophe, superhuman-related incidents have risen sharply across the globe. I think it's also important to point out here, Spider-Man and Captain America are on a rooftop on a janky couch watching the whole thing. I don't know why, but that just looks amazing. But the reporter continues on, right? The occult community is calling for society to prepare for a modern age of monsters. And that's where you switch over to these guys who were talking, right? Prepare. What's anybody supposed to do against something like that? Why are all the biggest, strongest ones always the worst ones? Why can't we ever get a monster who's on our side? And one of the people who is watching all of this is Bruce Banner. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Infernal Hulk is incredible. We got a month before the next issue comes out. Let me know if you guys want me to cover Philip Kennedy Johnson's run, because it is incredible. Like, it's an absolutely amazing, incredible Hulk story. But thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.